I have received my IsoTemp water heater. This is the Spa 15 liter, so almost 4 gallons. And a few things to point out. This is the one with the mixing valve, so I can adjust temperature. Shadows are bad. Here, it's going to mix cold water with the hot water out, and I'll actually get a lot more than the 4 gallons of water because it's mixing the extremely hot water temperature of your engine coolant with cool water. Cool water in is here. I've installed a backflow preventer so I don't get any hot water leaking out into my cold system. So this has been installed. I'll put a link below the video. And then, so it's 1/2 inch NPT right there, as well as the other side of my backflow preventer. Up on the hot side, this is 1/2 BSP. So you'll need a BSP to NPT adapter. You can try to force it, but it's not going to seal and fit well. And then on this thread, because it's hot, as well as the engine in and or out, depending on which way you hook it up. They recommend this Loctite PS592, and so that's exactly what I have used. It's a high temp thread sealant. And so this is 1/2 inch NPT, as is the other side. And I've installed half female to 5/8 barb hose fitting. I chose 5/8. That's the recommended size by IsoTemp. So just a quick look, initial look here at the water heater. I really like this option. It won't use any electricity. I'm not doing propane in this van build. And so this is exactly the way I received the water heater, and the only additions are these 4 fittings, the 2 barbs, the BSP to NPT adapter, and the backflow preventer. So I'm working now on locating all the holes. There is one other connection, and that is this 1/2 inch NPT drain, and it can be drained by turning this drain valve. And so this needs to be low, at the lowest point, depending on how you mount it. You can mount it vertically, but then this needs to be on the bottom. So I'll get back with more info once I start my install. I am starting on the engine side of the hot water tank water heater work for the IsoTemp Spa. So these are the 2 heater hoses coming out of the heater core on the Promaster, and I've actually already cut into one of them. I've cut into this hose. It comes out, there's an air bleeder valve, and it makes a 90 headed down towards the bottom of the engine. So what I've done is I've just split that about 4-inch piece of hose. I've not removed any hose because there is a little room to move towards the front of the engine, and I didn't really want to remove any hose material. So I've installed a 3/4 by 3/4 by 5/8 T. The hose coming out of the heater core here is 3/4. The hose that I'm using per the IsoTemp spec is 5/8. And then I've already installed one 5/8 full flow cutoff ball valve off of my T. And so the next step is to cut the second hose about halfway between where it comes out of the clamp and it makes a 90, and that's formed into the hose. So I'll sort of split the difference, install another 3/4 by 3/4 by 5/8 T and another 5/8 cutoff ball valve. That way if there's any issues with leaks towards the back, I can cut that out of the system, as well as I can install all this hardware, leave the valves off, and the engine is still, vehicle still usable, engine still drivable, until I get hose run to the back. Now my second T is installed on the other hose. Again, I just split it, inserted the T, and did not remove any material because the hose makes 90-degree turns right here, headed down, and there's room here in front, and that way I didn't waste any hose or If I need to splice them back together without those T's, I can, without too much trouble. You need to make sure you allow for room for these valves to be turned on and off. And then off those valves, my 5/8 hoses will continue and turn under the van. I'll wrap them in some pipe insulation to protect against road debris. I just lost a minimal amount of fluid, and I'll finish topping that up when I install the water heater in line. And I also like this position, splitting these hoses that are running forward and backwards, because it allows me to twist my T and angle it down and towards the direction where my hose will need to go. And it looks like, if I can reach down there, you can see daylight. My hose will probably turn right through this space, and I'll have to find a few things to maybe tie to stabilize it. But my valves are off, all the clamps are tightened, and I should be able to start the engine and check for leaks and leave it like this with those valves off until I'm ready to connect the rest of my hose. My hoses for the water heater come through just in front of the support over the rear axle. There's the rear axle. There's the support under the floor. And I'm coming through right here. I drilled oversized holes, and I'm actually using a PEX 3/4 inch bend support. They're metal, and they will keep the heater hose at a nice gentle angle so that it won't kink, and I can make my turn to run along the bottom side of these framing cross members. I'm going to put some pipe insulation on it to protect mostly against debris. I don't think temperature loss will be much of an issue, but it will help with that as well. I have finished connecting the coolant hoses from my T's at the heater core to the water heater, the isotherm in the back. What you're seeing here are these two brass valves are the back sides of the ball valve, 5/8 ball valves, because I used 5/8 hose from right here off the heater core through these T's, through two ball valves so I can shut them off back towards the water heater. I ran them along the driver's side underneath, kind of as tight up as I could. And here you're seeing those hoses coming up from the bottom. They basically run across the gas tank filler hose where it goes into the tank. Then they run underneath the battery box and come up through some open space and make the turn up to, you can see one of the blue handles on the valves here. Staying well away from the exhaust system. They're wrapped in the foam, which you can see ends right there as we get close. And you will have to make sure you get all the air out. In my case, I parked the van little nose uphill and pre-filled the hoses with coolant as much as I could, and then turned off the heat control so that if it does have a valve, it'll force more of the water through the other side of the T back to the isotherm water heater. And so I've run the engine, tried to circulate coolant, bled some air out. I will bleed some more air out until I'm confident I've gotten it full. It used about 3/4 of a gallon so far of coolant. You can see I'm just a little below max, so I can top it off some. I don't have any leaks. And so the next step is to attach the freshwater plumbing. This is hard to see, but I will do my best. You can see the heater hoses wrapped in the insulation exiting the van floor right in front of the rear tire. That is actually the water you see is actually the water heater drain that I've opened up because we're back from a trip. And so the hoses run tight against the floor over to, we're at the driver's side here, you can kind of tell there, and I've tried to stay well away from the exhaust and I think I have done a pretty good job of that. But I'm just running these just inside on the bottom of the frame, not the very outside, you know, not here at the rocker, but this next support that runs the length, and use some metal straps and some self-drilling sheet metal screws to strap those up, and some zip ties just to hold insulation together. And they run all the way up and just to the driver's side of the gas tank filler, and then make a turn up into the engine area. And we've taken this on one shakedown trip, and everything has worked great on this water heater. You may find a better route, and your location may dictate a different route, but as long as you avoid exhaust heat and just pick a good route, and good luck to you. The water heater has been mounted, and things are getting a little busy in here. Started putting some cabinetry for some drawers, but you can see here coming through the bottom, through the floor, my hoses, my 5/8 heater hoses. I've got some foam. I need to finish zip tying that, and that insulates them right up to the connections on the water heater. I left everything loose so I could see if there were any leaks, and I had a couple of issues I had to deal with. Primarily, this BSP to NPT adapter did not seal with Loctite 592. It must just not be hot enough. And since that is really no hotter than a hot water heater connection at home, I used Teflon tape and pipe thread compound to seal that, and that took care of my issue. You can see I've got the cover off, the access cover. There is a reset button, the little blue-green mechanism with the red button, and I've drilled a hole so I can access that. The reports are that when this runs on engine heat, it gets too hot, it trips the reset button, which is really a safety button for when it's on electric heat. It can be plugged in. That will be rare in my case. But things are bolted down. My fresh water's connected. We've done a short trip with a dry run. Maybe dry run's not the right word, because water was functional. The heater produced nice hot water. The adjustment valve, which lets you adjust the mixer to be hot or more cold coming out, worked just fine. So far, completely happy with this setup. And so I don't really see any other issues. I highly recommend this as an option if you don't want to use propane, and certainly is much cheaper than trying to have enough battery bank capacity to run a water heater. Good luck with your water heater install, whichever way you may go. From WanderingWakes, happy trails.